The grand hall of the Valoran Imperial Palace stretched wider than any building on Earth. Crystal pillars reached toward a ceiling that displayed the stars of 40 conquered systems. Queen Narathi stood at the center of it all, her purple skin gleaming under the ceremonial lights, her natural armor plates decorated with gold that marked her royal bloodline. She was beautiful by any standard, standing nearly 8 feet tall with 4 arms that could crush steel, and eyes that saw deeper into the light spectrum than humans could imagine. Today she would marry a human. The thought made her jaw tighten. The war had been brief but costly. 3 Valoran patrol ships had entered what humans called their territory. The humans had destroyed all 3 with weapons that shouldn't have worked against Valoran shields. The Empire demanded an explanation. Earth offered a treaty instead, and now to seal that treaty Narathi would bind herself to one of them. The human delegation entered through the main doors. Narathi watched them carefully. They were so small. The tallest among them barely reached her chest. They wore strange cloth suits instead of proper armor. They walked on 2 legs like children who hadn't yet developed their secondary limbs. How did such creatures survive on their world? Then she saw him, Jiwan, her future husband. He was even less impressive than she'd feared. Average height for a human, which made him tiny by Valoran standards. Slim build, dark hair that fell across his forehead. He wore glasses, which meant his species hadn't even mastered basic biological enhancement. His suit was simple and black. He carried no weapons. He looked like a scholar, not a warrior. Jiwan walked forward with steady steps. His face showed no fear, but Narathi saw how his hands stayed relaxed at his sides, how his eyes took in every detail of the hall. He was observing, recording, analyzing. Perhaps there was a mind worth respecting inside that fragile body. The ceremony began according to ancient Valoran tradition. The high priest spoke the words of binding in the old language. Narathi repeated the vows, her voice carrying across the hall. When Jiwan's turn came, he spoke in perfect Valoran. His accent was strange, shaped by a throat that wasn't built for their language, but every word was correct. The court stirred. They hadn't expected a human to learn their tongue. Throughout the ceremony, members of the royal court whispered among themselves. Narathi heard fragments of their conversations. They mocked this union. They called Jiwan a pet. They said the queen was wasted on a creature that would break if she touched him too firmly. Some laughed openly. Others made crude jokes about the wedding night. Jiwan gave no sign that he understood, though Narathi suspected he heard every word. His expression remained calm and polite. When the ceremony required him to place his hand against her primary right hand, he did so without hesitation. His skin was warm and soft compared to her armored plates. She could feel his pulse faster than a Valoran's, like a small bird's heart. The ceremonial feast lasted hours. Jiwan sat beside Narathi at the high table, eating sparingly from the foods that had been prepared for human digestion. He answered questions when addressed, always courteous, always measured in his responses. He didn't boast. He didn't try to impress anyone. He simply existed in their space with quiet dignity. General Tarek, commander of the Imperial fleet, leaned across the table. His armor bore the scars of 100 battles. He looked at Jiwan the way one might examine an insect. Tell me, human, Tarek said, his voice carrying to nearby tables. How many battles have you fought? None, Jiwan replied. The general laughed. Others joined him. None. The queen marries a creature who has never seen combat. Perhaps you count supplies, maintain equipment. I handle cultural relations and diplomatic protocol, Jiwan said. His tone remained even. My role is to prevent battles, not fight them. A talker. Tarek slammed one of his 4 hands on the table. This is what Earth sends to honor the queen. A talker who hides while others fight. Narathi felt anger rise in her chest, but before she could speak, Jiwan responded. Every species values different strengths, he said. Valoran culture honors warrior prowess. That's admirable. Earth's history taught us that the greatest victory is the one where no one has to die. We consider diplomatic skill a strength, not a weakness. Pretty words, Tarek sneered. But words don't win wars. Perhaps not, Jiwan agreed. But they can prevent them. And that saves lives on both sides. The general had no response to that. He turned away, dismissing the human as beneath his notice. But Narathi saw something in Jiwan's eyes for just a moment. Something cold and calculating, gone so quickly she wondered if she'd imagined it. The celebration continued into the night. Dancers performed traditional war dances. Musicians played songs of conquest. Young warriors engaged in ritual combat for the entertainment of the court. Through it all, Ji-won watched. He asked questions about Veloran customs. He complimented the artistry of the performances. He was perfectly, impeccably polite. When the feast finally ended, servants escorted Ji-won to the royal quarters that he would share with Narathi. She followed later after attending to matters of state that couldn't wait even for a wedding night. She found him standing by the window, looking out at the 3 moons that hung in the purple sky. He'd removed his jacket and tie. His white shirt was simple and plain. He looked even more fragile without the formal clothing. "This must be overwhelming for you," Narathi said, speaking in his language now that they were alone. "My people were not kind tonight. They don't trust humans," Ji-won replied. He didn't turn from the window. "That's reasonable. We're unknown. Unknown things are frightening. You're not frightened?" "I'm terrified." He smiled slightly. "But being frightened and showing fear are different things." Narathi moved closer. She had expected to feel pity for this human, or perhaps resentment at being forced into this marriage. Instead, she felt curious. There was something about Ji-won that didn't match what she saw, like a puzzle with pieces that didn't quite fit. "Why did Earth choose you?" she asked. "For this marriage. You said you prevent battles. But surely they have diplomats with more experience, older, more distinguished." Ji-won finally turned to face her. In the moonlight, his dark eyes were unreadable. "They chose me because I volunteered," he said, "and because I understand what's at stake. Earth and Velora can be allies or enemies. The choice we make now will affect billions of lives. I wanted to be part of making that choice turn out right. Even if it means binding yourself to someone you don't know, living in a place where you're mocked, being surrounded by people who see you as weak." "Yes, why?" Ji-won was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Because someone has to build bridges between our peoples. Someone has to be willing to be uncomfortable, to be underestimated, to absorb the insults and keep trying. That's what diplomacy is, and I happen to be very good at being underestimated." Narathi studied him. There was something in the way he said those last words, something that made her think there were layers to this human that she hadn't yet discovered. "We should rest," she said finally. "Tomorrow you begin your new life here." "Yes," Ji-won agreed. He moved to the sleeping chamber that had been prepared for him, separate from hers as was proper for the first weeks of a political marriage. As he passed, Narathi caught his scent. Humans smelled different than Velorans, warmer, earthier, not unpleasant, just different. After he closed the door, she stood alone in the main room thinking about the day, thinking about the marriage she'd been forced into, thinking about the small, quiet human who spoke gentle words while something calculating moved behind his eyes. She had married a human to secure peace. She wondered what else she had brought into her home. 3 weeks passed since the wedding. Ji-won settled into palace life with surprising ease. Each morning he woke early, before even the servants began their duties. He explored the palace gardens, which sprawled across several acres of carefully maintained alien vegetation. He'd brought seeds from Earth, and with the Queen's permission planted a small corner with tomatoes, herbs, and flowers from his homeworld. The palace staff treated him with polite indifference. They brought his meals, cleaned his quarters, and answered his questions. But they never quite looked at him directly. To them, he was the Queen's strange pet, an oddity, something to work around rather than engage with. Ji-won spent his afternoons in the royal archives. The Veloran library contained millions of documents spanning thousands of years. History, military strategy, biology, culture, art. He read everything they would allow him to access. The archivists were initially suspicious, but Ji-won's genuine interest in their civilization gradually won them over. He asked intelligent questions. He made connections between historical events. He understood the significance of their stories. One archivist, an elderly Veloran named Keth, began bringing Ji-won texts that weren't in the general collection. Battle reports, anatomical studies, tactical analyses. Keth never explained why he shared these materials. Perhaps he felt sorry for the human. Perhaps he saw something in Ji-won's careful study that reminded him of younger warriors preparing for combat. Narathi watched her husband from a distance. Her duties kept her busy with matters of state, but she made time to dine with Ji-won in the evenings. These meals became something she looked forward to. Ji-won was easy to talk with. He listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, his observations were sharp and often surprising. One evening, as they ate in the private dining chamber, Narathi asked about his day. "I've been reading about the Kelthera Rebellion," Ji-won said, referring to an event from Velaran history 300 years past. "Your ancestor, Queen Marathi, faced an impossible situation. 7 systems in revolt. Her fleet outnumbered 3-1. Every advisor told her to negotiate. But she didn't," Narathi said. "She attacked the rebel leadership directly, decapitated their command structure in one decisive strike. The rebellion collapsed within weeks. It was brilliant," Ji-won said. "High risk, but the only move that could work. She understood that sometimes you win by doing what your enemy thinks you're too weak or too smart to try." Narathi looked at her husband with new appreciation. "Most scholars focus on the honor of her combat skills. You see the strategy beneath it." "Strategy interests me more than honor," Ji-won said simply. "Honor is important, but survival is more important." These conversations revealed depths to Ji-won that the court never saw. When she was with him, Narathi could almost forget that the Empire still saw this marriage as a joke, but the Empire wouldn't let her forget for long. The trouble came from Hyunwoo, her cousin. He was everything a Valoran warrior should be: tall, powerful, scarred from battles across the frontier. He commanded the 3rd Imperial Fleet and had personally led the assault that broke the Kreth resistance 5 years ago. He was also ambitious, dangerous, and he made no secret of his belief that he should sit on the throne instead of Narathi. Hyunwoo had been away on patrol during the wedding. When he returned and learned of the Queen's marriage to a human, his rage was legendary. He'd smashed furniture in his quarters. He'd challenged 3 of his own officers to combat to burn off his anger, and he'd immediately begun plotting. The opportunity came during a royal banquet held to celebrate the Festival of Conquest. The Great Hall was filled with military officers, nobles, and important citizens from across the Empire. Narathi sat at the high table with Ji-won beside her. The human wore formal attire, a black suit that looked out of place among the armored Valorans. Hyunwoo entered late, making sure everyone saw him. He wore his full military regalia, every medal and honor displayed. His armor bore fresh scratches from recent combat. He looked every bit the warrior prince. He approached the high table and bowed to Narathi with exaggerated formality. Then his eyes shifted to Ji-won. "So this is the human," Hyunwoo said loudly. The hall quieted. Everyone wanted to hear this. "I've heard so much about him. They say he's very intelligent, very learned, very gentle." Ji-won stood and bowed in the Valoran style. "Commander Hyunwoo, your reputation precedes you. It's an honor to meet a warrior of your caliber." "Is it?" Hyunwoo stepped closer. He towered over Ji-won, more than 3 feet taller. "Tell me, human, what do you know of honor? What do you know of combat? What do you know of anything that matters to Valarans?" "I know that honor without wisdom is just pride," Ji-won said calmly. "And that combat without purpose is just violence." The hall drew a collective breath. No one spoke to Hyunwoo that way. The commander's face darkened. He reached for the ceremonial glass of fire wine in front of Ji-won and knocked it from the table. The glass shattered on the stone floor. Red liquid splashed across Ji-won's shoes. "Clumsy of me," Hyunwoo said. "But then accidents happen around fragile things." Narathi started to rise, her anger building, but Ji-won placed a gentle hand near hers. The gesture was subtle. It said, "Let me handle this, no harm done," Ji-won said. He looked directly at Hyunwoo without flinching. "Glass breaks. That's its nature. The strong don't need to prove their strength by breaking things that can't fight back." Hyunwoo's 4 hands clenched into fists. "You dare suggest I'm afraid to face you?" "I suggest nothing. I simply stated a fact." The commander leaned down until his face was inches from Ji-won's. "You sit beside our queen like you belong there. You walk our halls like you have a right to be here. But you're nothing. A weak little creature from a weak little world. You're an insult to everything the Empire stands for." "Perhaps," Ji-won said. His voice remained steady. "Or perhaps the Empire is strong enough to include those who are different without feeling threatened." Hyunwoo straightened. He looked around the hall, making sure every witness understood what came next. "I invoke the right of challenge," he declared. The ancient words echoed through the sudden silence. "This human is unworthy to stand beside the queen. I challenge him to trial by combat. Let his blood prove what his words cannot. The hall erupted in excitement. The right of challenge was sacred. Once invoked, it could not be refused without admitting cowardice. And cowardice meant exile. Narathi felt cold dread in her stomach. She'd seen Hyunwoo fight. He was one of the finest warriors in the Empire. He would kill Ji-won. This wasn't a challenge. It was assassination dressed in tradition. Hyunwoo, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. This is madness. Ji-won is not a warrior. This challenge has no honor. Honor is defined by strength, Hyunwoo replied. If he's worthy to marry the queen, he's worthy to defend that right. Or does the human need his wife to protect him? All eyes turned to Ji-won. He stood very still. His expression was thoughtful, like he was solving a complex equation in his head. I accept, he said quietly. The hall roared with approval. Narathi grabbed Ji-won's arm. You can't, he'll kill you. Ji-won looked at her. For just a moment she saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. It wasn't fear. It wasn't resignation. It was something else entirely. Something calculating and cold. I need 3 days to prepare, Ji-won said to Hyunwoo. Is that acceptable? 3 days? Hyunwoo laughed. Will 3 days make you grow armor? Give you warrior strength? Very well, human. Take your 3 days. Pray to your gods. Say goodbye to the queen. In 3 days I'll show the Empire what happens to those who don't belong. He turned and walked away, victorious. The crowd celebrated. They would witness a spectacle. They would see a human broken by Valoran might. Narathi pulled Ji-won away from the banquet into a private corridor. Her hands shook with anger and fear. Why did you accept? She demanded. You can't win. Even if you were trained, which you're not, you couldn't win. Hyunwoo has killed warriors twice your size. I know, Ji-won said. Then why? Ji-won looked down the corridor toward the sounds of celebration. When he spoke, his voice was different. Still quiet, but with an edge she hadn't heard before. Because refusing would make me look weak. Looking weak would make you look weak. And making you look weak would embolden your enemies. This isn't about me, Narathi. It's about your position, your power. If I run from this challenge, every noble in that hall will question your judgment for marrying me. I'd rather be questioned than be a widow. You won't be. He said it with absolute certainty. Ji-won, you don't understand. Hyunwoo is, I understand perfectly. He met her eyes. Trust me, please, she wanted to argue. To forbid the challenge. To protect this strange human who'd somehow become important to her in 3 short weeks. But she saw something in his face that made her pause. 3 days, she said. What will you do with 3 days? Prepare, Ji-won said. May I use the training grounds? Of course. But Ji-won, I know what I'm doing, he said. Then he smiled, and it was the saddest smile she'd ever seen. I've known since I volunteered for this marriage that something like this would happen. Your cousin isn't the first person to underestimate humans. He won't be the last. But he's about to learn something that Earth learned thousands of years ago. What's that? That the most dangerous enemy is the one you never saw coming. The palace training grounds were empty at night. Narathi had dismissed the guards, claiming she needed privacy for meditation. In truth, she'd come to watch Ji-won, to understand, to see what he could possibly hope to accomplish in 3 days that would save his life. She hid in the shadows of the observation gallery, a place where officers normally watched trainees. From here she had a perfect view of the main combat floor, large enough for full military exercises. Equipped with every training weapon the Empire possessed, Ji-won entered alone. He wore simple exercise clothing, black pants and a fitted shirt that revealed how slim his build really was. No armor, no weapons. He looked like someone preparing for a morning workout, not training to fight for his life. He walked to the center of the floor and stood perfectly still. His eyes closed. His breathing slowed. For 5 full minutes he didn't move. Narathi wondered if this was some kind of human meditation ritual. Then he moved. Narathi's breath caught in her throat. Ji-won flowed through combat forms with speed that shouldn't have been possible. His movements were economical, precise. Every motion had purpose. He struck at invisible enemies, his hands and feet moving in patterns that targeted specific points. Narathi recognized some of the targets from her own training. Nerve clusters, joint vulnerabilities, the soft places where armor plates met. But it was the speed that shocked her. Ji-won moved faster than her eyes could fully track. He'd seemed so slow and careful in daily life, This was different. This was a predator's speed. He practiced for an hour, moving through forms that combined striking, grappling, and ground fighting. Then he moved to the weapons rack. He selected a simple metal staff. In Veloran combat, the staff was considered a training weapon. Children learned with it before graduating to real blades. But in Jiwan's hands, the staff became something else entirely. He spun it with frightening speed. The air whistled as it cut through space. He struck training dummies, and Narathi heard the crack of metal against synthetic flesh. The impacts would have broken bones, crushed skulls. The staff moved like an extension of his body, striking from impossible angles. After another hour, Jiwan set down the staff. He walked to the weight section. Veloran training weights were designed for warriors who could lift 3 times their body mass. Jiwan examined them, selected ones that would challenge even experienced soldiers, and began systematic strength exercises. Narathi watched his muscles work under the thin shirt. He was stronger than he looked. Much stronger. The way he moved the weights wasn't about raw power. It was about control. Perfect, absolute control. She thought about the past 3 weeks. Jiwan's gentle demeanor, his careful movements around the palace, his soft voice and patient manner. It had all been real, but it wasn't complete. This was also real. This controlled violence was also part of who he was. After weights, Jiwan approached the holographic training system. This was advanced technology, used to prepare warriors for combat against dangerous species from across the Empire. The holograms weren't perfect, but they were close enough to provide realistic training. Jiwan activated the system. He cycled through the interface with familiar ease. He'd used this before, Narathi realized. During his afternoon visits to the training grounds when he claimed he was just exercising, he selected a program. The difficulty setting made Narathi's eyes widen. Maximum level. Multiple opponents. Full combat parameters. The holograms materialized. 6 opponents. Creatures from nightmare worlds. A Kreth war beast, all claws and teeth. 2 Velkarn mercenaries with their poisoned blades. A Thranix assassin. A Gorvan heavy trooper. And a Veloran royal guard. Jiwan didn't hesitate. He engaged. What Narathi witnessed defied everything she thought she knew about humans. Jiwan fought with calculated brutality. He used the environment, rolled under attacks, struck at weak points with precision that came from deep knowledge of alien anatomy. When the Kreth beast lunged, he sidestepped and struck at the nerve cluster behind its front leg. When the Velkarn attacked, he disarmed one and used its blade against the other. The Thranix assassin should have killed him. They were ambush predators capable of moving nearly invisible. But Jiwan tracked it somehow. When it struck from behind, he was already turning, already moving, and his counterstrike hit its third eye with perfect accuracy. The fight lasted 8 minutes. When it ended, all 6 holographic opponents were neutralized. Jiwan stood in the center of the floor, breathing hard but still standing. There wasn't a scratch on him. He reset the program and ran it again. Then again. Each time he fought differently, tested different strategies, adapted to different scenarios. Narathi couldn't stay hidden any longer. She stepped from the shadows and walked onto the training floor. Jiwan stopped mid-exercise. He wasn't surprised to see her. He'd known she was there all along. "How long have you been watching?" he asked. "Long enough." Her voice shook slightly. "You lied to me. To everyone." "No." Jiwan grabbed a towel and wiped sweat from his face. "I never lied. I told General Tarek I wasn't a soldier." "That's true. I'm not a soldier. I'm a diplomat. Diplomats don't move like that. They don't fight like that. Earth diplomats do." He met her eyes. When you represent a species that everyone thinks is weak, you need to be able to back up your words if necessary. I wasn't lying when I said my job is to prevent battles, but I was trained to survive if prevention fails. Narathi moved closer. She studied him with new eyes. "What else haven't you told me?" Jiwan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Sit down, please. This is going to take a while." They sat on a training bench. Around them, the empty grounds felt vast and full of secrets. Jiwan stared at his hands while he spoke. "Earth is a dangerous planet," he began. "Not because of technology or weapons. Because of nature. Our world evolved apex predators that made our ancestors prey. Big cats that hunted in darkness. Pack hunters that chased for miles, parasites, diseases, venomous creatures. Our planet tried to kill us for millions of years. But you survived. We did more than survive. We became the apex predator. Humans aren't strong like Velorans. We don't have armor or claws, but we have endurance. We can run for hours when other predators tire. We can adapt. We can learn. And we never ever stop. He looked at her then. Do you know what persistence hunting is? Narathi shook her head. It's how ancient humans caught prey. We'd find an animal, something faster than us, stronger than us, and we'd chase it. For hours, all day if necessary. The animal would run until it collapsed from exhaustion. Then we'd walk up and kill it. We weren't faster. We weren't stronger. We just refused to stop. That's terrifying. Yes. Jiwan's smile was grim. That's what Earth is. A planet full of creatures that won't stop, that adapt to any environment, that learn from every failure. When we developed intelligence, we turned that same relentless behavior toward each other. We created weapons, strategies. We fought wars that lasted generations. We invented ways to kill each other that you can't imagine. But your planet has peace now, because we scared ourselves. Jiwan stood and walked to the window. Outside, the alien moons hung in the sky. We developed weapons that could destroy continents, biological agents that could end civilization, AI systems that learned to fight better than any human. We came very close to making our species extinct. That's when we stopped, not because we became peaceful, but because we became afraid of our own capacity for destruction. Narathi felt cold understanding wash over her. You let the galaxy think you're weak. We let them think we're harmless. Confined to one planet because we couldn't expand. In reality, we were confined because we were too dangerous to ourselves. We needed time to grow up, to learn to control what we'd become. When your empire appeared and looked down on us as primitive, we decided that was fine. Let them underestimate us. Let them think we're not a threat. It's safer that way. For who? For everyone. Jiwan turned back to her. Do you know why I volunteered for this marriage? Why Earth sent a diplomat instead of a soldier or a politician? Tell me. Because both our peoples need to understand each other before we make terrible mistakes. The Veloran Empire is strong, honorable. But you're used to enemies who fight like you do. Humans don't fight like anyone else. We fight to win, and we've spent thousands of years perfecting how to win against opponents stronger than us. Narathi thought about the holographic battle she'd witnessed. The calculated brutality, the precise targeting of weaknesses. Hyunwoo is going to try to kill you. Yes, you're going to kill him. Jiwan hesitated, then nodded slowly. If I have to, I'd prefer not to. Killing him would create political problems. But if he forces my hand, I'll do what's necessary to survive. You could have told me before accepting the challenge. I couldn't. If you'd known what I'm capable of, you might have stopped the challenge. That would have solved the immediate problem, but created a bigger one. The court needs to see that humans aren't helpless. They need to understand that underestimating us is dangerous. Hyunwoo's challenge gave me a chance to show them without starting a war. Narathi stood and walked to where Jiwan had been training. She picked up the staff he'd used. It was heavier than it looked. Show me, she said. Show you what? How you'll fight Hyunwoo. I need to understand. For the next 2 hours, Jiwan demonstrated Veloran anatomy's weak points. The places where armor plates left gaps. The nerve clusters that could disable the arena was packed with 10,000 Velorans. Every noble military officer and important citizen who could secure entry had come to witness the spectacle. The circular combat floor stretched 200 feet across, surrounded by rising tiers of seats that climbed toward a crystal dome. Afternoon light filtered through, casting sharp shadows across the sand. Narathi sat in the royal box with her advisors. Her face showed no emotion, but her primary hands gripped the armrests hard enough to leave dents in the metal. She'd tried one last time that morning to stop this. Jiwan had refused. He'd kissed her forehead gently and told her to have faith. The crowd roared as Hyunwoo entered from the western gate. He wore full ceremonial armor, dark purple plates that covered his body but left his limbs free for combat. He carried 2 energy blades that hummed with lethal power. The weapons could cut through stone. They'd slice through human flesh like it wasn't there. He raised his arms to the crowd, drinking in their worship. This was his moment. The warrior prince proving his superiority, showing the empire that the queen's human husband was a mistake that needed correction. The eastern gate opened. Jiwan walked out alone. The crowd's cheers turned to confused murmuring. Jiwan wore minimal protective gear. A simple chest plate, arm guards, leg protection, nothing compared to Hunwoo's full armor. He carried weapons that looked ceremonial. A pair of short swords from Earth. They were beautiful with curved blades and wrapped handles, but they seemed like toys next to Hyunwoo's energy weapons. Ji-won walked to the center of the arena. His movements were calm, unhurried. He looked small under the vast dome. Fragile. The betting odds were running 1,000 to 1 against him. The combat judge, a retired general named Vorak, stood between the fighters. He was old, scarred, and had overseen hundreds of challenges. He looked at Ji-won with something like pity. "The right of challenge has been invoked," Vorak announced. His voice echoed through the arena. "Commander Hyunwoo claims the human Ji-won is unworthy to stand beside Queen Narathi. The accused has accepted combat trial. The rules are simple. Fight until one submits, is unable to continue, or dies. The winner's claim is proven. The loser's claim is ended. Do both fighters understand?" "I understand," Hyunwoo said, his voice eager. "I understand," Ji-won replied quietly. "Then let honor decide truth." Vorak stepped back to the arena edge. "Begin." Hyunwoo didn't waste time. He charged immediately, closing the distance with frightening speed. His energy blades cut through the air, aimed at Ji-won's midsection. The first strike would end this. Cut the human in half. Prove Valoran superiority. Ji-won wasn't there. He'd moved before Hyunwoo reached him, sliding to the side with footwork that looked effortless. Hyunwoo's blades cut empty air. The crowd gasped. That speed, that reaction time. Humans weren't supposed to move like that. Hyunwoo spun and attacked again, a flurry of strikes high and low coming from multiple angles. His forearms gave him an advantage, allowing combinations no human could match. But Ji-won didn't try to match them. He deflected, redirected, moved just enough to let the blades pass harmlessly. For 3 minutes they fought, and Hyunwoo didn't land a single hit. The crowd's bloodthirsty cheers turned uncertain. This wasn't what they'd expected. The human should be dead already. Instead, he was making Hyunwoo look clumsy. Hyunwoo realized it too. Anger replaced his confidence. He activated his armor's power boost, increasing his speed and strength. He came at Ji-won with everything he had, abandoning technique for pure aggression. Ji-won dropped low. One of Hyunwoo's blades passed overhead. Ji-won's sword came up in a precise strike that hit the gap where Hyunwoo's chest armor met his arm plate. The blade bit deep. Not a killing blow, but painful. First blood, Hyunwoo roared and stumbled back. Purple blood dripped down his armor. He looked at the wound in disbelief. Then at Ji-won. The human stood ready, his expression calm. Patient, like he had all day. The crowd was silent now. They were witnessing something unprecedented. A human making a Valoran warrior bleed. In the royal box, Narathi leaned forward. Her advisors stared, shocked, speechless. This wasn't possible. Except it was happening right in front of them. Hyunwoo attacked with renewed fury. But fury was a weakness, and Ji-won exploited it. He let Hyunwoo wear himself down. Let the bigger warrior exhaust his strength against an opponent who barely seemed to be trying. Every strike Hyunwoo made, Ji-won avoided. Every opening Hyunwoo created, Ji-won punished with small, precise cuts. After 10 minutes, Hyunwoo was breathing hard. His armor was scored with a dozen minor wounds. None were serious, but together they were taking their toll. Blood loss, fatigue, frustration, the warrior prince was being picked apart. "Stand still and fight," Hyunwoo screamed. "I am fighting," Ji-won replied. "Just not the way you expected." Hyunwoo charged again, reckless now. Ji-won sidestepped and struck at Hyunwoo's knee. The blade found the nerve cluster Ji-won had studied in the archives. Hyunwoo's leg buckled. He crashed to one knee, his energy blades digging into the sand. Ji-won moved behind him, one sword pressed against Hyunwoo's neck, right where the armor plates separated. A killing position. Hyunwoo froze. "Yield," Ji-won said quietly. "You've lost. Don't make me kill you." Hyunwoo's entire body shook with rage and humiliation. The crowd waited. 10,000 Valorans watching their warrior prince defeated by a human. "Never," Hyunwoo growled. He tried to rise. Ji-won's blade pressed harder. A thin line of purple blood appeared. "I don't want to kill you. You're the queen's cousin. Your death would hurt her. Please, yield." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Hyunwoo's shoulders slumped. His energy blades deactivated. "I yield," he whispered. "Louder," Ji-won said. "So everyone can hear. I yield," Hyunwoo shouted. The words echoed through the silent arena. Ji-won stepped back and sheathed his swords. He offered his hand to help Hyunwoo up. The Valoran stared at the offered hand like it was a serpent. Then he slapped it away and struggled to his feet alone. He limped from the arena without looking back, his pride shattered. Judge Vorak approached Jiwon. The old warrior's face was unreadable. He raised Jiwon's arm in victory. "The challenge is answered," Vorak announced. "Jiwon of Earth is proven worthy." The crowd didn't cheer. They simply stared, processing what they'd witnessed. Everything they thought they knew about humans had just been destroyed. Jiwon walked from the arena. Narathi met him at the gate. She pulled him into a private corridor away from staring eyes. "Are you hurt?" she asked, checking him over. "Just tired." Jiwon removed his chest plate. There were bruises where Hyunwoo's attacks had come close, but no serious injuries. "You held back," Narathi said. "You could have killed him easily. I saw you train. You could have ended it in the first minute. Killing him would have made me a villain. Defeating him makes a point. Making him yield proves humans aren't helpless, but we're not monsters either. It's the difference between creating an enemy and teaching a lesson." Narathi pulled him close. "The Empire's going to demand answers. About you. About Earth. About what else you've been hiding." "I know." Jiwon rested his head against her shoulder. "Are you ready for those answers?" She thought about the question, about what revealing humanity's true nature would mean, about how it would change everything between their peoples. "Tell me," she said. "Tell me everything." They went to her private chambers. Jiwon cleaned his wounds while he spoke. He told her about Earth's military capabilities, about weapons that could crack planets, about AI warfare systems that learned faster than living strategists, about ships that had been built in secret, waiting in hidden stations throughout Sol system, about the fact that humanity's apparent weakness was the greatest deception in galactic history. "We have enough firepower to destroy the Valoran Empire," Jiwon said, "but that would make us tyrants. So instead we pretended to be weak. We let you believe you were superior. We waited for a chance to build bridges instead of burn them." "Why?" Narathi asked. "Why not just reveal your strength from the beginning?" "Because strong species make enemies. Weak species make friends. We needed friends more than we needed fear. But now circumstances have forced our hand. Better to reveal the truth through one diplomatic marriage than through war." Narathi looked at the human she'd married. "What happens now?" "Now we decide what kind of relationship our peoples will have. The Empire knows humans aren't helpless. They'll be afraid. Anger. Some will want war to prove Valoran superiority. Others will want alliance to avoid fighting an enemy they don't understand. You'll need to guide them. Help them see that partnership is better than conflict. And if they choose conflict," Jiwon's face became hard, "then Earth will do what Earth always does, survive no matter the cost." A communication device chimed. Narathi answered. It was her defense minister, his face urgent on the screen. "Your Majesty, we have a situation. Long-range sensors are detecting an unknown fleet entering Imperial space from the outer rim. They're not responding to hails. Fleet composition suggests hostile intent." Narathi felt her blood run cold. "How many ships?" "Thousands. And they're growing." "Your Majesty, they match the profile of the Krelvath swarm. The reports we dismissed as frontier legends." Jiwon stepped into view of the screen. "What's the Krelvath swarm?" The minister looked at the human with new rang. The Krelvath swarm hit the outer colony 72 hours after the first detection. 3 systems went dark in rapid succession. Communication cut off mid-transmission. Automated distress beacons screamed briefly, then fell silent. When scout ships investigated, they found planets stripped of life. Buildings stood empty. Cities became tombs. Millions of Valorans simply gone, absorbed into the biological mass of the swarm. The Imperial war room filled with officers arguing strategies. General Tarek, his earlier contempt for humans forgotten in the face of survival, coordinated the defensive fleet. Ships from across the Empire converged on strong-point positions. 40 years of Valoran military doctrine would be tested against an enemy that had destroyed civilizations. Jiwon stood beside Queen Narathi, studying the tactical displays. The swarm didn't move like normal fleets. They flowed like liquid. Thousands of biological ships that could merge, split, and adapt to any defense. Sensors showed them learning from each engagement. Tactics that worked once never worked twice. "They're testing us," Jiwon said. "Each attack teaches them more about Valoran combat doctrine. They're building a database of how you fight." "Then we change how we fight," Narathi replied. "That's not enough. They adapt faster than you can innovate. You need to fight in ways they've never encountered before. You need something outside their database. A new signal appeared on the displays, ships emerging from jump space at the system's edge. The officers tensed, expecting more swarm forces. Then the identification codes came through, Earth vessels. 73 of them. The Velaran officers stared. They'd expected a token force, a few ships to honor the alliance. Instead, humanity had sent a battle fleet. Admiral Minho appeared on the main screen. He wore the dark uniform of Earth's Deep Space Navy, his face professionally neutral. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship showed technology that made Velaran engineers' eyes widen. Displays showing tactical information in ways they'd never considered. Weapon systems they couldn't identify. Queen Narathi, Minho said in perfect Veloran, Earth's Second Fleet reporting for duty. We're ready to engage the enemy. Where do you need us? Narathi looked at Jiwan. He nodded slightly. Permission granted, Admiral Minho, she said. Coordinate with General Tarek. We're establishing a defensive line at the Corvin system. If they break through there, they reach our inner colonies. We can't let that happen. Understood. Transmitting our tactical capabilities now. Data flooded the Valoran command systems. The officers watched in growing shock. The human ships carried weapons that violated 3 different weapons treaties. Kinetic accelerators that could punch through shields. Nuclear-pumped lasers with ranges that shouldn't be possible. And something called antimatter warheads that made the Valoran admiral go pale. These weapons, General Tarek said carefully. Some of them are planet killers. Yes, Minho replied without emotion. The swarm has already killed billions. We brought appropriate tools. Jiwan stepped forward. General Tarek, human combat doctrine is different from yours. We need to establish joint command protocols. I recommend no need, Tarek interrupted. You've proven yourself human. What do you suggest? The change in Tarek's tone was subtle but significant. After the arena combat, after seeing Earth's fleet, the general no longer spoke to Jiwan as an inferior. He spoke to him as a warrior. The swarm adapts to patterns, Jiwan said. So we don't establish patterns. We randomize engagement tactics. We use unpredictable combinations of Velaran and human strategies. We make sure they can never build a complete database. Agreed. I'll coordinate with Admiral Minho on deployment. The combined fleet reached the Corvin system 12 hours before the swarm arrived. The defense was carefully layered. Velaran heavy cruisers formed the main line, their powerful shields and armor designed to absorb punishment. Human ships stayed mobile on the flanks, their lighter frames trading protection for speed. When the swarm came, they came in waves that blotted out the stars. Thousands of organic ships, each one a living weapon. They moved with perfect coordination, like a single organism spread across space. The battle began. Velaran ships engaged with traditional tactics. Heavy weapons fire, energy shields, ship-to-ship combat that relied on armor and firepower. They destroyed hundreds of swarm vessels. But for every ship destroyed, 2 more appeared. The swarm seemed endless. Then the human ships engaged, and the Valorans saw a different kind of warfare. Human vessels didn't stand and trade fire. They hit and ran. They used stealth systems to disappear from sensors. They deployed drones that attacked from unexpected angles. They launched missiles that didn't just explode, but released submunitions that targeted specific swarm ship types. A human destroyer, the Dajon, executed a maneuver that made Valoran pilots gasp. It accelerated directly toward a swarm cluster, fired its main cannons at point-blank range, then used its own weapon blast as a shield while it performed an emergency FTL microjump. The jump lasted 2 seconds and moved the ship only 1,000 kilometers, but it appeared behind the enemy formation. By the time the swarm reacted, the Dajon had destroyed 5 more ships and jumped again. Who taught them to fight like that? General Tarek demanded. No one taught us, Jiwan replied. We developed these tactics over centuries of fighting each other. Humans are very good at learning to kill other humans. The swarm is just another problem to solve. The battle raged for 16 hours. The combined fleet held the line, but barely. For every swarm ship destroyed, more arrived. They were endless, relentless. They didn't care about casualties. They just kept coming. In the command center, exhausted officers monitored casualty reports. Both human and Velaran ships were being damaged faster than they could retreat for repairs. At this rate, the fleet would be ground down to nothing within days. We can't win a war of attrition, Narathi said. They outnumber us 100 to 1. Then we don't fight a war of attrition, Jiwan replied. We cut off their reinforcements. He pulled up the strategic map. The swarm is coming through the Mekran expanse. It's an area of unstable space with dozens of small wormholes. That's why they can bring in ships so fast. They're using the wormholes as a highway system. We know, Tarek said. But those wormholes are naturally occurring. We can't close them. No, but we can collapse them. Jiwan highlighted a point in the expanse. There's a gravity anomaly here. A dying stellar remnant. If we trigger it with enough energy, it will create a cascade that destabilizes the entire region. The wormholes will collapse. The swarm gets cut off from its main force. Admiral Minho's face appeared on screen. He understood immediately. You want to use atomics to trigger the remnant. The explosion would destroy everything in 3 systems. 3 uninhabited systems, Jiwan corrected. We evacuated them already. The loss is acceptable. Acceptable? One of Narathi's advisors looked horrified. You're talking about destroying 3 star systems. I'm talking about saving 40, Jiwan replied. The swarm has already killed millions. If we don't stop them here, they'll consume the entire empire. Sometimes survival requires doing terrible things. Narathi looked at the map, at the blinking markers representing her people's ships, at the red mass of swarm forces that seemed to grow with every passing minute. She thought about the colonies already lost, about the billions who would die if this continued. How many ships would we lose executing this plan? She asked. Minimum 12, Minho said. We'd need ships to deliver the warheads and trigger them simultaneously. It's a one-way mission. The crews wouldn't escape the blast radius. The command center went silent. Velaran culture honored warriors who died in glory. But this wasn't glory. This was suicide by nuclear fire. I'll call for volunteers, Tarek said quietly. No need, Minho replied. Earth ships will handle it. We've trained for this kind of mission. Narathi looked at Jiwan. Your people will sacrifice themselves for the Empire? Our people will sacrifice themselves to stop the swarm, Jiwan corrected. This isn't about the Empire. This is about survival. If the swarm isn't stopped here, they'll reach Earth eventually. We're fighting for everyone. 12 human ships broke from the fleet and headed toward the Mekran expanse. Their crews knew they wouldn't return. The lead ship was the Busan, commanded by Captain Yuna. She was 34 years old, had a doctorate in stellar physics, and had volunteered without hesitation. Narathi watched the ships move toward their target. Why do they do it? How can they accept death so calmly? Because they understand something that takes most species longer to learn, Jiwan said. Individual survival doesn't matter if the species dies. Humanity has nearly gone extinct multiple times. We learned that sometimes someone has to be willing to die so others can live. Your culture honors warriors who die in combat. Ours honors anyone who dies protecting others. It's not the same thing, but it comes from the same place. The 12 ships reached the anomaly. They spread out in a careful formation, each one carrying antimatter warheads powerful enough to crack a moon. On the command channel, Captain Yuna's voice was steady. All ships in position, arming warheads. Admiral Minho, it's been an honor serving with you. The honor was mine, Captain, Minho replied. Your families will know what you did here. That's all we can ask. A pause.
Detonation in 10 seconds.
See you on the other side.